Good evening and welcome to another episode of Good News Online. This evening I want to read from Luke's Gospel, Dr. Luke, and I want to read from chapter 8, starting at verse 43. So the Lord Jesus, he's actually on his way to visit someone else, and he encounters this woman in the way, if you like. And verse 43 starts like so. And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came behind him and touched the border of his garment. And immediately her issue of blood was staunched. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When all denied, Peter and they that were with him said, "Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me?" And Jesus said, "Somebody hath touched me, for I perceive that virtue is gone out of me." And when the woman saw that she was not hid, she came trembling. And falling down before him, she declared unto him before all the people for what cause she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. And he said unto her, "Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace." You know, this evening we've read of a woman here who had a medical issue. She was bleeding constantly for 12 years. And in this time she'd spent everything she had. She had expended all her resources trying to be healed. But unfortunately, the doctors were not able to help her. You know, this would have been a particular problem in those days, because in those days, bleeding was seen as a sign of uncleanness. So she would have been an outcast in her society. So, you know, there would have been, it would have made it even more difficult for her. And this story, the reason it caught my eye was because it resonated with the message I'd like to send out this evening. Its likeness to the gospel is was just so evident to me as I read through it. You know, this poor woman with this issue that she had for such a long time was stopping her just, you know, going about her normal life, playing her part in society. And she was willing to give everything she had to, you know, to take that back. And, you know, how that's like us. So this evening we have an issue. We have an issue, and that issue is sin this evening. You know, and what that issue does is we are separated from God. We are separated from our Creator God. So like this woman who was, if you like, separated from her society of the day, we are separated from God in the same way. But you know, this woman that we've read about this evening, 3 verses in, she gets salvation. Because 3 verses in, you get those words, Jesus said. You know, I want to just draw your attention to the fact that there were lots of people. So on this particular day, there were lots of people who were the word is thronging. That's the word that's used in the Bible, and what that really means is there was lots of people, you know, reaching out, trying to touch him, touch the Lord Jesus, trying to, you know, just even, you know, we read of other stories where people are just trying to catch a glimpse of him in the Bible. He had built up quite a following by this point, and you know, there were lots of people that touched Jesus that day, but they weren't called out. This woman in particular was called out. Now, as I said, she was doing the same as everything else. She was reaching out, you know, touching him. But the difference with this woman was that she wasn't reaching out. She wasn't reaching out just to see what would happen. She wasn't just like, oh, you know, there's some kind of a local celebrity in town or that kind of thing. She was reaching out because she knew she had a need and she believed that this man could fix it. That was her motivation for reaching out. And that's our position this evening. We have a need, we have an issue, and that issue is sin. And only the Lord Jesus Christ, this man who we have read about this evening, can fix that. We are required to do what this woman has done, this woman did, and that is to reach out in faith. We don't call this series Good News Online for no reason. It really is good news. I was listening to a podcast earlier actually, and the person that was speaking reminded me of these words in Romans 5, and they say this: where sin did abound, grace did much more abound. And I encourage you this evening, I encourage you to reach out to the Lord Jesus Christ in faith, as this woman did. Earlier on that same chapter actually, it says while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. The Lord Jesus Christ was the perfect sacrifice. He was the only suitable sacrifice for sin. And I want you not to lose sight of the fact this evening that sin is not something that's treated lightly by God. It's not something that we'll get to stand someday and make a case for, like reverently speaking, God, I've done all these good things which outweigh the bad things that I've done. No, sin is much more serious than that to God, to the point that God actually gave a part of himself. He gave his own son to be crucified, to be a living sacrifice for sin, that we might be healed of it, that we might be fitted for heaven, basically. So I would ask you this evening that you consider these things. Like I said, I've read from Luke's Gospel, and I encourage you to get a Bible and to open it and read for yourself. Thank you very much for listening.